everybody. Welcome to the panel on Can Agility and Tools Be Pretty? This topic is an important one at MPS because our vision is to make publishing smarter. And as we've built the tools and workflows to realize this vision, we've realized that in order to be adopted, operationalized, and utilized, tools have to be intuitive and easy to use, in addition to improving efficiencies. Here today to discuss the topic, we have Brian Davies, our Vice President of Product Solutions at Elsevier, Joe Burgess, Project Manager and Implementation Consultant for K&K Software, Ian Mulvaney, Head of Transformation at Sage Publishing, and Chris Brennan, ECMS Systems Manager at Emerald Publishing. The panelists will present how they have been able to enhance user experience through their tool and production platform upgrades. They'll reflect on lessons they learned through this process, share best practices, and discuss how user experience is not a consequence, but rather a means to a successful upgrade and transition. Each of the top panelists will present on the topic, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions and answers. So with that, we can get started. Chris Brennan is ECMS Systems Manager at Emerald Publishing. He has over 15 years of publishing experience across a variety of sectors. Chris began his career as a journalist on consumer publications before transitioning to a variety of freelance publishing roles in B2B and B2C positions. He's a guest lecturer and final year undergraduate supervisor at Leeds Beckett University, covering publishing topics for the business school.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks. So basically, I'm going to cover a couple of things that I've done in the last year whilst at Emerald. One that went well and one that, shall we say, went less well. So can smarter and more agile processes result in an enhanced user experience? I believe the answer to that is yes, so I'll leave you in suspense. But I think that the really, really important thing is that you have to build that beauty in from the outset. You can't do it and then add it on later. It just doesn't work like that. And so what I'm going to talk about is one of the first projects that we undertook, which was, I'm sure that many of you will be aware of this kind of process, moving FTP packages of content from one place to another, and I don't think anything can really replicate the childlike thrill of moving zip packages from one FTP server to another FTP server, through another FTP server, and then back to the FTP server where you started successfully. But that is part of the process that we built. We had a manual process that was automated in parts, and then manual in other parts, and then automated again. And basically, we moved content from a CMS to the vendor with some validation and a little arrow back if it didn't validate, and back to our CMS, and then onto our platform. And we built a system from the outset with the user in mind, and with a small team in an agile way that allowed us to really do this process automatically. And the beauty isn't in the visual, it's in how it works. And our internal users, when they saw this, were like, ooh, that's fantastic. And I would take, a lot of people in this room would look at that screenshot of our interface and think, that is not the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, I have to admit. However, to our users who were using this day in, day out, they could see the invisible behind what was happening here, and they really, really loved it. In fact, one user said, that's really cool. And I think if you're a systems person building systems and one of the users says, that's really cool, without you saying, here's some cash, please say that's really cool, that is something that's really, really a positive outcome. And sorry, I skipped a bit too quickly, sorry. The other thing about that is that process didn't just benefit our internal users, it benefited every user in our process, because we had a faster time to publication, we were able to do things more quickly. And although we focused very narrowly on one specific process, we were able to speed up and bring a benefit to everyone in the process. So author content got back to us and online in a much more orderly and useful fashion. And the other thing I want to move on now is to using user research, which is hugely important, and it's something we did an awful lot with the first process. The second bit is something where, from my experience, it was using and understanding and asking the right questions, and we tried to make a beautiful interface. So what is beauty? Well, Hume would have it that beauty is no quality in something itself, and I think the last part of this is important. Every individual ought to acquiesce to his own sentiment without pretending to regulate those of others. It's a fairly obvious thing to try and think, but you need to keep that in mind the whole time, because some people think this looks beautiful, and some people will, if you'll forgive the pun, argue with you until the cows come home that this is not beautiful. But those two opinions are perfectly valid. So I sat down with some of my users and said, this is our interface. What do you like? What do you not like? Which part of this is beautiful? And of course, the first user was a very intelligent, articulate user and agreed with the bit that I said needed improving. So I asked another user, and they said, well, I like this, but I'd like that to be different. And then another user said, I'd like this, and I'd like that to be different. Another user said, I like this, and I'd like that to be different. And there was a pattern. Thankfully, that little green splodge at the bottom was a really, really nice bit that everyone liked. So we had something, if nothing else. But I realized what I'd done is I asked the wrong question. I asked, what do you like? What does this look like? Do you like the look of it? As opposed to, how do you use this? What's the best way to use this? Or sit with those users and see them use it and say, I could make this slightly easier for you by changing just a few small interface things. But that comes back to the idea of, if you want to build beauty in an agile way, you have to start with the process. You have to start with the very, very simple question of what are we trying to achieve. And once you have that, you can start to make your process more pretty. Thank you.
Any questions right now, or we can take them at the end too? All right, thanks, Chris. Next, we have Jo Burgess. Jo is a project manager and implementation consultant for K&K Software. She joined the organization earlier this year. K&K was founded in 1988 and develops and distributes the only Microsoft-certified publishing software in the world. It complements a range of services provided by Microsoft Dynamics with publishing-specific functionality for book, magazine, and specialist publishers, and is based on the latest web and business intelligence technology. Jo brings to the role 30 years hands-on experience of working in academic and professional publishing in a variety of positions, including publisher, editorial and production director, and systems director. She has also worked as an independent consultant with clients across the publishing, not-for-profit, and membership sectors. Over to you, Jo.
Thank you. It's good to be here this afternoon. Like Michelle, I'm going to ask you to bear with me if I read from my notes, because you've got far more chance of understanding what I'm saying if I read it than make it up. I've learned an awful lot today, not the least being that I should have phoned Nancy before I came out this morning. But anyway, and you've been given quite a good summary of my career, but I'll give you a bit more information. As has been said, I worked in academic and professional publishing for 30 years, with the second half of that time as either editorial and production director or as a systems director. The experience I gained was very much in relation to developing and implementing internal systems and tools to enable staff, or in the context of this session, users, to work more efficiently and effectively. Agility was essential in ensuring that their experience was an integral part of the virtuous circle of development, testing, implementation, and improvement. And has been said, I then went on to spend a number of years working as an independent consultant. I have to admit that when K&K approached me earlier this year with a view to joining them, I had never heard of them, and I suspect that may be true for many of you too. As has been said, K&K was founded 30 years ago in Germany, and until quite recently had concentrated on that market where it was highly successful. On the back of that success, and with the introduction of more internationally based clients, the last 5 years have seen the company establish offices in the US and France, and now in the UK. As you can see from the slide, it has strong ties with Microsoft, having been a gold partner for the last 13 years, and is the developer of the only Microsoft-certified business software in the world, specifically for publishers. This is just to give you an idea of the type of customers the company has, and as you can see, they cover a range of STM, academic and trade publishers, many of which you will recognise, though in Germany, it's likely they may be less familiar. So, having spent the vast majority of my career as a publisher, I now find myself on the other side of the fence working for a software developer. As a newcomer to this world, I'm not going to pretend I'm suddenly a technical expert, but I do believe my years as someone in publishing seeking to find solutions to practical day-to-day problems gives me a useful insight into the issues users may be facing. And being asked to take part in this session today has given me an opportunity to look at the processes one specific company uses to enhance the user experience through tool and platform upgrades. The question we've been asked to address is whether agility in tools can be pretty. Much of this, how this is answered depends on how you define pretty. And I liked what Chris was saying about it being much more than simply visual appearance. That being said, there's no doubt that in the world in general, and not solely in publishing, there's an expectation that information will be easily available. We take for granted that we'll be able to access information on any device we choose, that our relationship with that data will be interactive, and that we'll be able to collaborate with other people, regardless of whether we're at our desks or on the move. As the latest STM report suggests, mobile is no longer optional. We expect to be able to work smart wherever we are, and it's a given that the user experience should be secure, reliable, and visually easy to interpret. And perhaps that's a more traditional take on the word pretty. Now that I am on the other side of the fence, perhaps it's inevitable that I see the importance of agility in a slightly different way. And maybe my role here today is partly to play devil's advocate. So now, more on to how K&K approaches things. As an organisation, K&K takes the importance of the learning process very seriously. It underpins the ability to deliver effective product development. There are several sources for that learning. Feedback from the sales team enables us to keep abreast of the challenges and opportunities facing the customers we meet, both existing and prospective. By entering into intensive dialogue with them, requirements of practical relevance are continuously integrated into the development of our software. Specific customer projects add a more detailed layer to this learning, especially when working with an individual customer leads to the development of bespoke functionality. This may have been developed to meet their particular needs, but could it be useful to another organisation? Having a close association with Microsoft means we can leave them to look after the underlying technology while we concentrate on the things specifically related to publishing and where we add value. K&K, and so by extension our customers, automatically benefit from the enhancements Microsoft make to their user experience, and it's natural that those developments feed into our thinking about future design and delivery of our software. And of course, added to these are the combined experiences of K&K's people, many of whom, like me, have direct experience of the publishing industry. Alongside these factors, membership of industry bodies ensures that K&K keeps abreast of current thinking and conversations, which can then be taken into account as part of the development process. While the information in the slides so far supports the use of an agile methodology, It's also important to stress that complex software development needs to be carefully managed and planned, and so an agile approach is combined with a waterfall methodology. Feedback plays a central role in the regular conception meetings, which then lead on to release planning. In the main, we have 2 releases a year, so very much taking a structured rather than an agile approach, and also tying in with Microsoft's biannual upgrades. As might be expected, releases include new functionality, but also bug fixes and improvements. Taking a structured approach to our work is important not only for the effective management of the software development itself, but also so that our customers know what functionality is in the pipeline, and so they can plan when and if to adopt upgrades. There's no compulsion for them to have the upgrades. Regular communication with customers is vital to our ability to support them and takes the form of things like printed materials and roundtable meetings, bringing together groups of customers, as well as annual review meetings and webinars. Continuing the theme of working in a structured way, the schedule for an upgrade will look something like this. The approach ensures that all the essential phases are covered off in the right order, including communication with internal departments and with customers. So K&K has found that working in a purely agile way, incorporating regular and frequent user feedback and changing course in response to that, can make it really difficult to deliver an enhanced user experience across the board. In essence, we're building one product for multiple organisations, each with their own preferences and requirements. And so while taking these into proper account is important, it also needs to be combined with what some might think of as a stricter, less fluid way of working. And maybe that's an example of the benevolent dictatorship that Bill Kastorf referred to this morning. For us, this mixture of agile and waterfall methodology adds values to the ways in which we communicate beyond K&K, to our ability to develop software effectively, and to the ways in which we support our customers. And without that, we wouldn't be able to deliver what we do. All of this provides an incredibly powerful way to build business processes supported by world-class tools that can span across every system within an organisation. Though, of course, none of it is an end in itself. So while I support the notion that agility and tools can be pretty, I wouldn't suggest that using a more structured approach alongside it necessarily creates an ugly sister. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Next, we have Brian. He is Vice President of Product Solutions in the Reference Solutions book business at Elsevier. Brian has been with Elsevier for 18 years in several project management and product management roles, focusing on customer-driven innovation in the reference space. He leads a small but high-performing team based in Asia, Europe, and the US that is highly skilled at collaborating and executing across a matrix organization with a focus on transitioning their business from a print-based transactional one to one that is online and recurring, and at the same time redefining what reference means to their customers and their organization. He is an electronic systems engineer by background, having served in the military and in the rail sectors before moving to Elsevier. Over to you.
Hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Brian, as you heard from the initial introduction. So I'm responsible for development of online book products on Elsevier's Science Direct platform. So what I'm going to talk about is agility and tools can be pretty, and it can also deliver significant impact. And I'll show you a case study of something we're working on at the moment that illustrates how that's done. So what I'm going to talk about is the problem we started with and where we see the opportunity and how we're developing that. Looking at how we develop a solution, which is agile and I believe pretty. where we are now in terms of results, where we see real impact in terms of what we delivered, but also adding a little bit on top of that in terms of how we can use the benefits that we generated through this agile development to deliver additional benefits to the organization. So in terms of the problem, we spend a lot of time talking to users. Sometimes it's feedback through our sales teams. My product teams spend time talking to users, talking to buyers. And here is an idea of some of the themes that we generally get. So book user experience isn't aligned with user needs. So as we move from print to online, user expectation, user needs have changed. So what you hear sometimes, you'll talk to researchers about books, and they say they never use books. Often they do, they just don't know they're using books. When you talk about books, they often think about the print product on the shelf. They don't think about what the modern manifestation of that is now online. And sometimes the value proposition isn't clear. So if you talk to especially younger users, what kind of problem does a book solve for them as opposed to a journal? It's not always clear. So what this does then, so if you have a poor value perception from the user, it leads to a poor value perception from the buyer, from the librarian. So the usage is often not compelling because the content isn't discoverable. We don't get the recommendations necessarily from faculty to endorse the product, although they're using it, they don't realize they're using it. So what that becomes from a librarian's perspective, it's a nice to have rather than a must have product, which I feel it means that the user is missing out on a certain type of knowledge which will really help them. So from Elsevier's perspective, what that means is poor business outcomes. What we're finding is online revenue doesn't replace the decline in print fully. The book content isn't getting as used as much as it should do. And a lot of accounts we have on Science Direct who have journals, only 30% of them have books because they don't see the value in acquiring that kind of content. So in terms of the opportunity, though, with all of this interaction we do with our customers, you hear some core themes as well, which is where we see the opportunity. So users, they're not really looking for books and journals in a lot of cases. They're looking for answers to questions. They're looking for content that gives them those answers. So that's their starting point. Foundational content, which is really books, is a great place to start if you're doing interdisciplinary research. You want to understand a new subject. Many of us, when we want to understand a new subject, we'll go to Google, we'll go to Wikipedia to do that. We want them to use that book content which they can't find in order to do that. Also, when you have the content online, what you also see is usage behavior. So usage behavior also shows us that although users don't think they're using books, they often are because the usage data actually shows us that. So there's some work for us to do, to make the most of that opportunity. So in terms of the solution we're developing, we start with something really simple. We spoke about, simple, I think in Chris's presentation. So we've developed this product called Science Direct Topics. And it's a simple page like this. So what we've done, we've taken a content agnostic perspective and we've put foundational content on a page. It's not asking users to look for a book or a journal and make that kind of decision. It's saying, if I'm interested in this particular subject, here's a definition, here are some related terms, and here are some related articles. It gives you a nice little snippet so that you can get a sense of that subject, whether that's enough or actually shows you where you can go to get additional information if you want. But also think about user needs as well. A lot of people, researchers, students, they start with Google. So we need to make sure that that's properly represented. We need to make sure that users can discover these pages through Google very easily. So the way we've developed these is, so the first part we have a definition, and we've extracted this definition from our book content. We found the related terms, which are from our taxonomy and related to that area. And then we get a snippet of content, which we again have selected from our book content. So this gives you that general overview of a subject. So the way this works, and being agile, what we set out to do changed. So it evolved as we moved through the process. So the original idea was a user would start with an article page. Within the article, maybe they're working in an interdisciplinary subject, they'll find a concept or term which they're not familiar with. Normal user behavior in that case is to go to Google and search it. Okay, so what we thought we'd do is actually we'd put a link on the key concept, which will then take you to a topic page to give you an overview of that subject. So that was what we intended to do, but what we found by putting this free layer of content onto the topic page, it made it very discoverable. And what we found now is 80% of the traffic to the topic page actually comes from Google rather than from the article, which is where we originally intended it to come from. So the idea then is if the user is interested in the subject, again, the topic page may give them the value they need, that may be all they need, but it gives them links then to a full text chapter if that's what they want to do. So very simple in terms of the concept. So how we got there, we took a very agile kind of approach, very, very simple design. A couple of examples of how we went about that. So the topic page, one of the things we focused on was the click-through rate. So when a user comes to the topic page, we want them to engage with that and essentially click through to the full text. So what we do, we take an agile approach to optimize that. So we're focusing on a metric in this particular phase, which is the click-through rate. So we make changes to the page to see how they engage to try and improve that rate. So we started off in our prototype with an engagement rate of like 2.5%. So people that came to the page, 2.5% of them clicked through to the full text. We optimized that page further, and we're about 27% now in production. So we've done that in iterative steps over time. The other part was to do with the SEO optimization. So thinking about that page, there are snippets of content there. We optimized the layouts there to increase SEO, and it started about 20% of the traffic was coming through from Google, and it's about 80% of the traffic now is coming from Google purely through that agile optimization of the design. So again, starting really, really simple and just optimizing against those metrics. So the other things we considered as well as we did this was how can we deliver further benefits, but also how could we really scale it. So we've actually developed, there's 330,000 of these topic pages which developed through automation. So we developed a process which takes a taxonomy term. So we developed taxonomy first of all for a domain. The process takes the taxonomy term, trawls through all of our content looking for this term and finds what it thinks is a definition. So we trained it to recognize what a definition looks like. So that's the first part. And then we find the relevant content. So this is all done automatically through deep learning and NLP. We make it dynamic because we add content all the time to our databases. We make sure it works for different domains. So we started off in neurosciences. When you move into something like chemistry, for example, a definition might be different in terms of its structure. So a definition in chemistry may be a chemical formula. So you need to train the algorithm to adapt to those kind of things. And then we looked at how can we extend what we are doing here to the business. So how could we use this to feed to sales and to feed to publishing, so publishing get a better idea of what they need to publish based on user behavior. So these are the results. This is how we're doing with this. So as I said, we've created 330,000 of these topic pages through automation. We've done the SEO, and we're getting like an 8.1 ranking through Google across that, which is quite good. 7.5 million visits per month to these topic pages, which is 15% of all traffic to Science Direct. And this is our MVP at the moment, our minimum viable product. So it's really, really simple. We started really simple, but we're having a big impact in terms of what we're doing. We're getting 60% return users, which gives you an indication of value because people are coming back to use it. What we set out to do was really to drive discoverability and usage of book content, and that's grown 28% year to date. The other thing we were trying to optimize against the metric was co-usage, was the sessions where books and journals are used together, working on that premise that users want to find the content they're looking for, not necessarily a book and journal. That's increased by 48%. And the survey that we also provide on the page is 85% of users find this page useful. Okay, so these are some of the things we're interested in. And as you see, the usage has gone up considerably over the year since we've delivered it. The other benefits that we delivered, as I said, the data that we get from this is how can we use that data to benefit other parts of the organization. So we've developed a tool called Co-Usage Tool, which we then talk to librarians about, or maybe talk to researchers about, to say, actually, you've got users here who are using neuroscience journals alongside books from these areas. So people get a better understanding of user behavior, not just pure usage, which we find librarians really engage with that. They really like that. So one thing I'd say in terms of the pretty side, so we kept it really simple, but with this as well, it's not important to get it absolutely perfect. So if you were to look at some of these topic pages, and I'll give you some examples here, ones you can search for on your phone, you'll get a topic page here, normally ranked within the top 5, is that you'll look at them and you'll see some things and think, actually, I could have got a better definition of that. So it's not absolutely perfect, but it's delivering value because we're getting engagement, we're getting the usage, and we'll continue to improve on that. So that's my presentation. So so we're being agile. We're being pretty to a certain extent, but we're also not striving for perfection here as well in terms of how we do that. We're still getting a significant impact from what we're doing.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Brian for now? We'll save them for later. All right. Next we have Ian Mulvaney. Ian is the head of transformation at Sage Publishing. He helped set up Sage's Methods Innovation Incubator, Sage Ocean, following a lean product development approach. Previously, he ran technology operations for eLife, was head of product for Mendeley, and ran a number of early Web 2.0 products for Nature Publishing Group. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you. Okay, so I got co-opted onto this on Thursday, so I put my slides together last night, and what I'd like to talk about is some of the hows of doing user research, and I want to talk about that in the context of kind of picking the right tool for the right job. So I think kind of core question we want to know is when we build a new product or service, is that service desirable? Is it sustainable? And is it feasible? Can we actually make it? And I think user testing in various configurations can help answer all of those questions. Do people want the thing we're thinking about? Will they pay us for it? How much will they pay? Can they use it? And so I'll talk through just a couple of patterns at different levels of granularity. So at Sage, we have tons of products and services, and they come at different levels of scale. So in the core, we have the ones that really drive the business, most of the revenue of the business. They've got hundreds of millions of users. And then on the transformational side, we've got products that we're experimenting with that don't have that many people using them, but where we have more scope to play around with. And when it comes to tools and techniques and methodologies for trying to understand your user or understand business models, there are just a ton of processes out there. And one of the things that I've been coming to realize is that instead of getting focused on a particular methodology, try and ask yourself first, what is my level of granularity? How much information do I have about the system I'm involved in? And how much information do I need to get? So if I'm in a very broad context kind of question where I don't have access to really strong levered tools like A/B testing, then the kind of tools I might bring to bear on that question will not give me precise answers, but they might get me a better overview of the context that I'm asking those questions in. Whereas in contrast, if I do something like an A/B test, I'll get very high granularity on that answer. I'll definitely know if the green button or the red button is performing better, but it won't give me the context on whether I should even be having a button there in the first place, or even if the tool should be built in the first place. So always ask yourself first, what's the context that I'm working in, and then try and look for a tool that can help you with that context. I think that's my key message. So I'll just give some examples. I think simple wireframing, where you just draw some boxes and don't invest in any engineering, but just draw something, sit down with people, put it in front of them, and ask them what they think it tells you. What do these labels mean? What do they think will happen if you go from this page to that page? That can already uncover gaps between what you think you're doing in terms of building an idea for a product and what people see when they see that thing. Because you have to remember, when you start building tools and products and services, the team involved begin to create an internal narrative around what that thing does. But most of the people who come to your product will have never seen it before, so it has to speak to them implicitly and intuitively. So this is a really good way of uncovering some of those kinds of questions. On the question of pricing, one of the things we did a couple of years ago, well, just about a year and a half ago, was we hoisted landing pages with pricing information for a product that we hadn't built. And we just shot these out via an email campaign to see if we were getting engagement. And we had a landing page with no pricing and a landing page with pricing, and that gave us some data to indicate whether the pricing information would put people off from engaging with the value prop. And we built that in a day and got some information that helped make a decision on going forward with the product idea. So it's very lean. And can help uncover some of those kinds of uncertainties. I'll talk about this as just simple user testing, getting people in to use your tool and find out whether they can use it, and observing their behavior can uncover problems. So in one of our tools, we discovered that the thing that I've highlighted in the red square, that is not a clickable icon, but the blue ones over on the right are clickable icons. Turns out that's confusing. You can find out by testing with users. One of the other processes that we used was a thing called the Google Design Sprint, which allows you within 5 days to go from an analysis of a kind of landscape where you might be thinking about trying to bring a solution to bear into market, and within 5 days you can build a clickable prototype, get people in, test it. And we got lots of interesting questions answered with this. But we found that when we did that process, we were asking at the wrong level of granularity. So we built this prototype, which was really beautiful. People liked it. Our users liked it. The business liked it. And suddenly we were being asked to go away and actually develop it. But when we looked at it, we realized it had no supporting business model. And if we built it, it would never have been able to generate any revenue. So we asked the wrong level of granularity when we used that technique in this instance, just as an example. One of our other products is one of the ones that's on the transformational side, Sage Campus. It's an online learning platform for computational social science. You want to be able to empower your teams to understand the analytics on their platforms and on their products really quickly and easily without getting into too much overhead of process. So we embedded a tool called Crazy Egg on this platform, and you can see immediately where people are engaging with your product, and we found very quickly that people don't engage with the video, and the video was something that was costing us a lot of editorial and production effort to create for each of those courses. So although we haven't changed that process going forward, we know that if we commission new courses, we don't have to commission the video because it just wasn't getting any engagement, which was an easy way to get feedback on that product for a very small team. I think some of our larger platforms do require a more formal approach to user testing and usability testing. So a case study is just, we redesigned our research article page last year. And the only point that I want to make with this slide is because that's a page that is responsible for carrying much of our content, a significant amount of our revenue, and many of our users and user engagements, we did take a much more formal approach to that. We've brought in user experience as a discipline within the product development group. So I just call it, point here is lots of steps, taking a bit more of a formal approach, kind of a thing that you don't want to screw with too much. And got really good results from that approach. Improved the friendliness of the layout, improved the tools box on that page, understood how to improve the header and the navigation elements, and the labels of those elements even made a big difference. And the data was really positive. That's a quick overview. Basically, all the numbers went up. Yay, everyone's very happy. So that's it. That was my quick overview. We're hiring. We're always looking for interesting people. We're building a really nice multifunctional product team looking at tools in HSS and the SDM space. Thank you very much.
Thanks again. I'll start with a question for all of the panelists. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about the kind of testing and research that you did with users up front at the design stage, and then also on an ongoing basis for continuous optimization, that'd be great to hear.
I think because I'm from a different area, I feel, to other people, I'll start. And I'd say that because we're interacting with our customers all the time, that is absolutely vital to us, and that is an ongoing, constant process. So it's about talking to the people who may become our customers, but also the people who are already our customers, and making sure that what we're delivering provides what they want. But I wouldn't say that our relationship with them is sort of, I wouldn't classify it as research. It's if we don't get that right, we're not a successful company, and that hits us at the bottom line.
One thing I would say that I've benefited from immensely is actually doing the job itself as well. It's easy enough to sit with a user and say, do your job, and sure, I'll sit here and see what you're doing. But actually, if you sit down and do a bit of whatever that task is, you sometimes find the questions and answers, well, the questions answer themselves in terms of what have I done here, or what am I doing here? Why doesn't this make sense to me, and why can that person just do 50 of these all in one go, and it makes literally no sense to me? So actually, I think a really useful part of the user research is to actually sit down and try and achieve what you're trying to achieve yourself.
I think that's a really important point, because having spent 30 years working in publishing, now being on the software side, when we go and talk to people, I can understand the issues, because I've done exactly what you're saying. I've been there, I've done that job. And yeah, I think we tend to underplay just how important that is.
Sure.
So we have these like wide granularity of different kinds of tools and products and services, and we take different approaches with different ones. So for the teams that work with library-focused products, we run focus groups on a regular basis. We have those teams going out into libraries, sitting down with potential users, showing them wireframes, getting them to test with those wireframes. On the more experimental side, we're trying to develop new tools, products, and services. We're trying to get into the rigor of taking an hypothesis-driven approach, where we write up what the hypothesis is before we go into a testing phase, so that we don't end up fooling ourselves with the answers. So we try and set out what we would expect a criteria for success or failure to be, given the kind of evidence that we might find through the kind of testing that we might do. A couple of tools that we found quite useful in the last year, Kano model for finding whether features or attributes of a product or service are desirable or ignorable has been interesting. We've just recently been looking at a thing called the Van Wezenhoek, I think it's Van Wezenhoek pricing model, where you ask questions like, at what point would the price be too expensive? At what point would the price be too cheap? And then you can, statistically, get a kind of sense of where people think the price point is in market. Those have been really useful.
Yeah. So I think we take a combination of those approaches. One of them that we might just go out to sit with users for a couple of days and actually observe what they do, the kind of problems they're trying to solve and the pain points that they have. There's also then a hypothesis-driven kind of approach where we might have an idea of a solution. Again, we'll observe users, but there's also an element of actually get something out there, the example I showed there, where you're looking at the data. I mean, the proof is the data, that they're actually engaging with it, and how they behave with that. The other thing I think we try to do as well, there's a lot of focus on the user, which is absolutely right. You have to get the user experience absolutely right, but don't neglect the person that's actually going to pay for the product as well, especially if you're in a B2B business, where the buyer is a separate person to the user. We're running an experiment at the moment for a new product around methods. So methods in terms of reproducibility is a really big issue for many users and for many researchers. But trying to understand from a buyer perspective if that's something that resonates with them is also important. And what we're finding, some of them, they clearly understand it and some don't at all. So you need to be aware of those things before you run in and develop a product.
Thanks, that's interesting. Any questions from the audience? No?
I'm interested in one of your iterations. You removed Wikipedia snippets from the product.
Yeah.
What was the motivation for that?
So we move.
It was like on your chart where you're going dunk, 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 on engagement.
Yeah.
I think it was the second or third along. The bulleted point was remove Wikipedia previews. I don't know if you remember what the feature was.
I can't remember now. It's
Okay.
a long time ago. I'll have
Fair
to have a
enough.
look and see if I can remember for you.
I'll ask another question if we have the time. We do? Can you tell us a little bit about the types of testing you've done on your website and some of the findings you've had, maybe some of the ones you weren't quite expecting? Let's start with Brian, and then, start with, either way.
Well, I'm going to answer a different question.
Okay. So ask the question and answer it.
Yeah. So we've been testing a product over the last couple of months called Sage Advice. So it's a really nice idea. So the idea is researchers get stuck with their research problem. Supervisors and colleagues are notoriously busy, so could you create a two-sided marketplace where you had experts who had spare time and then be a lever between those two places? And we built a facade of a product really easily using like Stripe and Squarespace and Intercom, and you could plug all the pieces together, and we were sourcing experts. And our core hypothesis that we thought the product would live or die by was whether people got value in that interaction. So the goal was like, let's just get 20 interactions over the summer and then interview those people and see if value was being created in those interactions. And what we found over the course of the summer is that we had got our hypothesis completely wrong. The problem was not whether or not we could get people through to having interactions and whether we could match people. The problem was when we pitched this idea to graduate students, they didn't have any interest in paying for a service. They get that advice for free from their colleagues. But even then, we thought the service was more targeted towards early career researchers or later career researchers. They felt that we were being dismissive of their expertise. We're like, oh, this is obviously for undergraduates, so it's not obviously for me. And so our hypothesis that we were testing, we learned very quickly was, well, not really quickly, but not quickly enough, was located in the wrong part of the funnel of the engagement funnel. And so, we built the whole thing in about 4 weeks, and then we spent a few iterations of testing different marketing campaigns. And so it wasn't more than a 12-week process to realize our mistake with that.
Okay.
But it was interesting to have uncovered that our hypothesis was totally incorrect in that. Yeah.
Can't follow that.
That's interesting, thanks. Any other comments?
Our poor product manager, he believed in it so much. Every week we're coming back and we're like, I'm not sure the problem is where we think it is. We're not getting anyone signing up. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting that you said the finding out soon enough
Yeah.
is a win in itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And any, from your experience on the, this questions to all of the panelists as well, any areas where you've seen mistakes or things people should avoid doing when they're looking for these kinds of tools and solutions?
Way back when I was at Mendeley, we were testing a feature of being able to connect friends and see your little social network. And we tested it within, and then we rolled it out, and then it was weirdly, no one seems to be getting more than 5 friends. Why is it? What's going on? And it turned out that for the testing environment, one of the developers had hard-coded a limit of 5 in that field because it made it easier to test. And then when it went to production, that was a hard limit, so you just couldn't add more than 5 people. And that turned out to be the reason why that bit of that product wasn't working. But that was an easy fix, though. That was a one-line fix.
Watch out
So
for that.
that's one thing to not do, is don't hard-code values into your application where you can avoid it.
Thank you.
I think one of the lessons I've learned before is I think as publishers, your biggest asset is your content. And it's very easy to say, we've got all this great content, how can we create a great solution from this content? But you've got to be really careful to step back and really start with the use case. What's the problem you're trying to solve here? And you might find actually your content you have doesn't fit the bill in many cases. Hopefully it does. But I think that's the thing you've got to be really careful of.
Right.
Trying to create answers to problems that don't really exist. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's it from me. Unless we have any questions, we can wrap this up. Sounds like it's a wrap. Thanks, everybody. Thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.